How Google Translate made language dictionaries ancient history. Picture this. It's 2005 and you're a college student wrestling with a French assignment at 2 a.m. Your massive French-English dictionary weighs 3 pounds, costs $60, and somehow never contains the exact phrase you're desperately trying to decode. You flip through tissue-thin pages, squinting at microscopic text, cross-referencing verb conjugations, and after 20 minutes of archaeological excavation through alphabetized entries, you've translated exactly one sentence. Meanwhile, that same dictionary company that's been printing these linguistic tombstones since 1884 is about to get absolutely demolished by a search engine company that decided translation shouldn't require a degree in library science. This is the story of how Google Translate turned the entire dictionary industry into ancient history, making physical dictionaries as obsolete as rotary phones and as useful as a chocolate teapot. The dictionary industry in 2005 was living in blissful ignorance of its impending extinction. Publishers like Oxford University Press, Merriam-Webster, and Collins had been printing dictionaries for over a century, building empires on the simple premise that people needed books to understand other languages. The global dictionary market was worth approximately $2.5 billion annually, with language learning dictionaries representing nearly 40% of that revenue. Oxford alone sold over 120 million dictionaries worldwide, while Merriam-Webster dominated the American market with their iconic red-covered volumes that gathered dust on millions of bookshelves. These companies employed thousands of lexicographers who spent decades meticulously cataloging every possible word, phrase, and definition into massive tomes that required their own furniture to support. The average comprehensive bilingual dictionary contained between 50,000 to 100,000 entries, took 5 to 10 years to compile, and cost between $40 to $120 depending on the language pair. Students, travelers, and language learners had no choice but to lug these paper anchors around, accepting that language translation was inherently slow, cumbersome, and expensive. The industry's biggest innovation in decades was adding a CD-ROM to some editions, which was like putting a racing stripe on a horse-drawn carriage. Then, April 28, 2006 arrived like a linguistic apocalypse dressed in primary colors. Google launched Google Translate as a free web service, initially supporting only English and Arabic translation, using statistical machine translation technology that completely bypassed the traditional dictionary model. Instead of relying on human lexicographers to manually catalog words and definitions, Google's system analyzed millions of documents from the web, finding patterns in how languages corresponded to each other across massive data sets. The initial version was crude, often producing translations that read like they'd been filtered through a blender, but it had one absolutely devastating advantage over traditional dictionaries: speed. What took 20 minutes of dictionary diving now happened in 3 seconds with a simple copy and paste. Google's approach wasn't about perfect accuracy. It was about accessibility and instant gratification. Within 6 months, they'd added French, German, Spanish, and Italian, expanding to support 12 language pairs by the end of 2006. The writing wasn't just on the wall, it was being translated into 47 different languages in real time. The dictionary publishers initially dismissed Google Translate like music executives dismissed Napster, completely misunderstanding the fundamental shift happening beneath their feet. Oxford University Press spokesperson Margaret Patterson told the Times Educational Supplement in 2007 that automated translation lacks the nuance and cultural context that only trained lexicographers can provide, while Merriam-Webster president John Morse declared that students need authoritative sources, not algorithmic guesswork. They were technically correct, but strategically blind. Google wasn't trying to replace the accuracy of professional dictionaries. They were making translation accessible to people who would never buy a dictionary in the first place. By 2007, Google Translate supported 25 language pairs and was processing over 100 million translation requests monthly. The average user session lasted just 2.3 minutes, compared to the 15 to 20 minutes typically required for dictionary-based translation. Dictionary sales began declining in 2007, with Oxford reporting an 8% drop in language dictionary revenue. But publishers attributed this to normal market fluctuations, rather than recognizing the tsunami headed their way. They continued printing massive volumes while Google was teaching computers to understand human language patterns at scales no human lexicographer could match. Google's systematic expansion between 2008 and 2012 was like watching a linguistic empire conquer the world one language at a time. They launched 41 new languages in 2008 alone, reaching into previously neglected linguistic territories that traditional dictionary publishers had ignored due to small market sizes. Suddenly, you could translate between Welsh and Telugu, or from Latvian to Vietnamese, combinations for which no commercial dictionary had ever existed. Google's democratic approach to language support meant that speakers of minority languages finally had translation tools, while dictionary publishers had always focused only on major language pairs with sufficient market demand. The introduction of the Google Translate mobile app in 2010 was the equivalent of putting a dynamite stick in the dictionary industry's foundation. Now users could translate text instantly using their phone's camera, speaking directly into the app for voice translation, or even drawing characters on screen for languages like Chinese and Japanese. The app was downloaded 10 million times in its first 6 months, while physical dictionary sales continued their death spiral. By 2011, Google Translate supported 57 languages and was processing over 200 million translation requests daily, handling more translation volume in a single day than the entire global dictionary industry had facilitated in decades. The period between 2012 and 2015 witnessed Google Translate evolve from a useful but flawed tool into a genuinely viable replacement for traditional dictionaries, while simultaneously expanding into territories where dictionaries could never venture. The introduction of real-time conversation mode in 2013 was like bringing science fiction to life, allowing two people speaking different languages to have actual conversations through their phones. Dictionary publishers watched helplessly as Google added features they could never replicate: instant camera translation that could translate text and images, handwriting recognition for 45 languages, and offline translation capabilities that worked without internet connections. Google's integration of neural machine translation in 2015 represented a quantum leap in accuracy, with translations improving by 23% overnight for major language pairs. The system was now analyzing entire sentences for context rather than translating word by word, producing results that often matched or exceeded the quality of mid-level dictionaries for common phrases and sentences. Meanwhile, traditional dictionary sales had plummeted 67% since 2007, with Oxford closing 2 of their dictionary printing facilities and laying off 180 employees. Collins Dictionary reported that their bilingual dictionary sales had dropped 78%, while Merriam-Webster quietly discontinued 23 of their specialized language dictionaries due to insufficient demand. The economic devastation Google Translate inflicted on the dictionary industry makes other digital disruptions look gentle by comparison. Between 2006 and 2015, the global language dictionary market contracted from $2.5 billion to approximately $890 million, representing a 64% decline that left traditional publishers scrambling for survival. Oxford University Press, once the undisputed king of dictionary publishing, saw their language dictionary revenue drop 71% during this period, forcing them to shift focus toward digital products and educational services. Merriam-Webster's parent company, Encyclopedia Britannica, sold the entire division to an investment firm for just $87 million in 2012, a fraction of its estimated value 5 years earlier. The human cost was equally devastating, with an estimated 4,200 lexicographers, editors, and publishing professionals losing their jobs as companies downsized or eliminated entire dictionary divisions. Independent bookstores reported that language dictionaries, once representing 8 to 12% of their academic sales, had become virtually unsellable inventory, taking up valuable shelf space. College bookstores saw dictionary purchases drop 89% between 2008 and 2015, as students increasingly relied on free digital alternatives rather than spending money on books they might use a few times per semester. What made Google's victory even more crushing was how they accomplished it without directly competing in the traditional dictionary market at all. Google never printed a single dictionary, never hired a traditional lexicographer, and never claimed to be more accurate than established publishers. Instead, they redefined what translation could be: instant, free, accessible, and continuously improving without requiring new editions or purchases. By 2015, Google Translate supported 90 languages, could translate text and photos through phone cameras, worked offline for 52 language pairs, and processed over 500 million translation requests daily from more than 200 countries. The service had become so embedded in daily internet usage that Google reported translation requests were growing 30% annually, while traditional dictionary publishers were reporting double-digit declines year after year. Google's approach of crowdsourcing improvements through user feedback meant their translation quality improved continuously, while printed dictionaries remained frozen in time until the next expensive edition. The final insult came in 2015 when Google Translate's mobile app added real-time voice conversation translation, allowing users to have fluid conversations across language barriers without any dictionary at all. Traditional publishers found themselves in the impossible position of competing against a free service that was faster, more convenient, continuously improving, and accessible to anyone with an internet connection. The death of the dictionary industry wasn't just about one company beating another. It was about the fundamental transformation of how humans interact with language in the digital age. Google Translate succeeded because it understood that people don't want to study languages. They want to communicate across linguistic barriers as quickly and effortlessly as possible. The old dictionary model required users to understand grammar, verb conjugations, and linguistic structure before they could effectively translate anything complex. Google's approach eliminated all those barriers, allowing a grandmother in Ohio to video chat with her Korean daughter-in-law, or enabling a backpacker in Thailand to order food by pointing their phone at a menu. The democratization of translation meant that language barriers, which had limited human communication for millennia, suddenly became minor inconveniences rather than insurmountable obstacles. Dictionary publishers had spent centuries cataloging languages like museum curators, while Google treated languages like living, breathing communication systems that could be learned and replicated by machines. By 2015, the question wasn't whether Google Translate had killed the dictionary industry. It was whether anyone under 30 even knew what a physical dictionary looked like. The companies that had defined language learning for generations found themselves as obsolete as typewriter manufacturers, casualties of a world where instant gratification and technological convenience had made their careful, methodical approach to language translation seem quaint and unnecessarily difficult. Google hadn't just disrupted an industry, they'd fundamentally altered humanity's relationship with language itself, proving that sometimes the most devastating competition comes not from better dictionaries, but from making dictionaries completely unnecessary.